Trigun should have crashed and burned. It had all the red flags that reeked of a disaster waiting to happen. So why is it a classic? Trigun's MC is Vash the Stampede. He is a legendary gunslinger with a potential to destroy everything everywhere, and he has a $60 billion bounty on his head. Vash is actually a peaceful soul, and most of his infamy comes from the bounty hunters who screw things up while trying to get him. But why doesn't he remember one too many things about his past? How or why would this goofball manage to destroy a whole city? This anime answers these questions with varying levels of success. Let's get the action out of the way. The action is good, but sometimes it's disappointing because of dated animation. Trigun has the retro aesthetic, atmosphere, and occasionally impressive art direction that modern anime can replicate. Yeah, the storyboards are good enough to make static scenes look incredible, but even when the movement was competent, it didn't impress like some contemporary Madhouse anime. My experience with the manga's action was worse. I don't know if it's a me problem, but sometimes my dumbass had a stroke trying to understand what was going on in action sequences. But Trigun was never about the flashy fight. This show is carried by the characters. They add to his story because of how they are written to bounce off DMs. Vash is a pacifist, but not entirely like those we are used to. Characters like Kenshin and Thorfinn led violent, vengeful lives before changing their ways, but Vash is different. He was taught to be compassionate and value the lives of others from a young age. He never went through a killer phase, and when we see him in action for the first time, he isn't even shooting. And the story keeps pushing him more and more. He decides to be offensive. If memory serves me correct, Vash starts to properly use his gun from episode 5. Even when Vash wasn't offensive, he didn't get beat up by his opponents. Look, I understand why Makoto Yukimura would write Thorfinn to be roughed up, but I prefer Vash's style of pacifism between the two. Kindly read my ass in the comments. Johnny Young Bosch's performance perfectly encapsulates Vash's optimism and his struggle. He brings a certain charm and naive innocence to this character. I watched the dub because of him alone. But there are also characters like Wolfwood, Legato, and Knives. Wolfwood, being something of a priest, is in direct contrast with his life as a mercenary. He does questionable things in the story, but he had his own morals and goes through his own character development. Knives is Vash's twin brother. He is the main antagonist of this story. He is the antithesis of Vash. Vash is cheerful and sometimes chaotic. Knives is maniacal but also methodic. The flashback in episode 26 perfectly highlights how different they are. We see Vash when he was weaker, constantly sticking with his brother despite hating the messed up things he keeps doing. They get into a heated argument over Knives unaliving people, and Vash takes him on the leg. And I kid you not, Knives starts tweaking out.
My leg! My leg, it hurts. Why? Why? There's so much pain in my leg! Did you shoot me? Did you actually shoot me? I can't believe this! Did you really shoot me?
Keep in mind, he was gonna do worse things to humans, but he can't even believe Vash would shoot him. He can withstand the pain, but he doesn't think how the people he wants to slaughter would feel. He was surprised because Vash chose to oppose him and had the audacity to hurt him over the humans he sees as lesser. Later on, Knives forever tarnishes his brother's name, but Vash becomes the kind of guy who will take severe punishment if it means other people don't suffer, and Knives just gets worse. This right here is an extremely well written depiction of a psychopath. This dude makes a great villain for this story. Anime Knives is fundamentally different and a worse character than his manga version, but I would be lying if I said he was ruined. Trigun is about persistence, picking yourself back up, fighting for love and peace, and I just loved how they wrote all these characters / worked the story around them. To be blunt, the story isn't equally engaging from start to finish. Both the anime and manga are pretty meh in the beginning. What comes later is an insane amount of filler. I'm talking 17 episodes out of 26 being filler or anime original. The real shit starts when Legato the goat shows up. Before that, you get a bunch of episodic encounters that don't move the real plot forward, but they're crucial for setting up characters and themes. Meriru, Millie, and Vash keep running into each other. Vash tries to keep solving violent situations. I thought these were generic stories, but it's less boring in the anime due to the voice acting, music, etc. However, there are some highlights. One of the episodes stood out to me from the rest. I forgot many things from this anime, but not this. I'm talking about the episode called Lost July. It goes like this. Some hot chick shows up. Vash is simping over her, and she seems to have a thing for him. He gets hired to be her bodyguard. He's constantly jumped by an asshole. Generic stuff, right? Actually, no. Turns out they aren't after the girl. They're after Vash on the girl's command. This chick wanted revenge on Vash for destroying her city and ruining her life. In a last-ditch effort, she decides to nuke everything and Vash with it, but she doesn't succeed. Vash comes out after stopping the explosion. Everyone is running around, but the moment seems to have slowed down for him and the girl. Every bit of dialogue that comes out of their interaction afterwards is gold.
I'm very sorry that I didn't die. I just couldn't allow everyone in the city to be destroyed.
How dare you? How dare you say that after what you did?
I have no memory of any of it.
Then just let me blame you for it. Let me have my revenge. have to be you? Why did someone like you have to turn out to be Vash the Stampede?
A guy like Vash couldn't have destroyed her city. He even comforted her when she was a broken child and synced for her years later like a true Drake fan. The first time I watched Lost July, I thought it would be another generic story where Vash sims for a girl, helps her out and goes back to wandering without getting any punani. But that third act recontextualized the entire episode. It wouldn't be this surprising if the previous 5 episodes didn't get you used to a certain format. Lost July is one of the best animated episodes from this show. It would be perfect except Vash spends some time bobbing his head. It somewhat diminishes the impact of a beautiful scene. I burst out laughing when I saw that sick ass movement. This episode made me admire Vash's character in the anime. Go sheds tears for someone he doesn't even know properly. This is some sweet Superman shit in the best way possible. That's not even the best part. This entire episode is filler. They made all of it up, complaining that this anime is filler heavy and watching my videos without subscribing completely misses the point. Having 65% filler is a death sentence for any anime, but it actually worked in this show's favor. Even when I was disappointed on this as an adaptation, the fillers did the heavy lifting. Despite being a manga reader, it was unpredictable at just the right times, solely because of how they utilized filler. I knew the mystery about Vash's amnesia from the manga, but it's adapted different enough to be surprising at times. The filler brought coherence to the narrative, and if you skip them, you won't understand shit and will miss out on some amazing storytelling. However, the anime also made some questionable choices. The showrunners made new stuff up, cut storylines, elements, and plot threads. They cut out some amazing character development, borrowed only the most important stuff from the manga, changed many things, and some of the story beats can't hold a candle to the source material. Vash and Wolfwood sharing one last drink together felt heart-wrenching, but also epic after everything they went through together. That page has been burned into my memory. The anime set Wolfwood's final scene in a church. It's very emotional but also quiet. Wolfwood passes away alone, but at peace with himself, and those final shots are beautiful. Saying it just made me sad, but it's nowhere near as good. The source material also has great backstories for Knives' lapdogs, the Gung-Ho guns. The manga always showed the motivation of the Gung-Ho, and they were more characterized. Every encounter between a Gung-Ho gun and Vash was thrilling. Every time you learned their backstory, it resonated with you. Each of the deaths felt impactful. The anime barely has these backstories. Legato is my favorite antagonist in here. Legato's backstory in the manga was one of the most memorable. This dude basically grew up on Epstein Island, and Knives indirectly saved him, leading to Legato having internal homo loyalty for the man who only ages to go. The manga explored a lot of dark and mature themes to the point where I couldn't call it shonen. These plotlines made the world more believable because of the things some characters experienced. The anime explores its fair share of darkness, but not to that extent. I don't know why they didn't integrate some of these elements, even though it was the 90s. Trigun 1998 has a well-crafted world. They faithfully recreated the barren landscapes, the Old West inspired environment, and Western story elements, although too much of the lore and mystery is lost. Surprisingly enough, the stuff they changed is sometimes better than the manga. In the source material, Legato is unalive in a brutal fight against Vash, and these final moments are too epic for its own good, and I felt nothing. The anime changed all of it. Vash goes to confront Legato after failing to stop another Gung-Ho gun from unaliving himself. Legato creates a situation where Vash would have no choice but to end him. Legato threatened Vash that he will hurt his friends. It's an immensely tense situation, but the music is bittersweet, and the moment finally comes. Up to this point, Vash's stance was challenged many times. People warned him luck and persistence would work all the time, and Vash finally made his match. Legato's death mirrors Wolfwood's in many ways. Both are almost serene, but Legato's end is twisted. He was in heaven before he got to hell because he was making Vash suffer. Look at the smile on his face. This way of presentation makes this scene almost unnerving to watch compared to him lashing out in the manga. There was no physical fighting here. It was a battle of philosophies, and Legato managed to break down Vash for a while. His death left Vash in shambles, but it also moved his character forward. It's better precisely because it's not accurate to the manga. The ending is slightly disappointing, although the final fight was thrilling to watch. Even the animation consistently popped off, and I also like the hopeful nature of the ending, but the execution is kinda lame. The fate of Knives is too ambiguous. From the looks of it, Vash is gonna try to gentrify Knives. God knows how he plans to fix his psychotic brother. I do think Trigun is overrated. The manga is better overall. What I'm trying to say is, most unfaithful anime bastardize the original vision with unnecessary changes. Sometimes they are forever cuts to be incomplete because of being faithful adaptations. Trigun had the perfect recipe for failure, but it didn't turn out like the rest. It has good pacing despite skipping dozens of chapters. The characters are in bastardized. Showrunners actually knew what changes would have destroyed the story, so the heart of the manga didn't get lost in translation. This is why Trigun is a classic, and modern animes should learn something from it.